For decades, the ruling system in Iran has depended on strict ideology and blind obedience to keep its power intact. Loyalty was the glue that held the entire security structure together. But today, that foundation is cracking in a way never seen before. The Revolutionary Guards, long portrayed as untouchable and unwavering, are now facing the largest wave of defiance and internal collapse in their history. Generals, officers, rank-and-file soldiers, and even members of the ruling family itself are turning against the very authority they once served without question. Iran, which had been lulled for years by stories of sacred defense and heroic sacrifice, woke up just 2 days ago to what many now describe as the greatest betrayal the system has ever faced. Reports claim that Ismail Khamenei, the commander of the Revolutionary Guards, was not standing on any battlefield. Instead, he was allegedly fleeing the country along a secret route while carrying an estimated $700 million taken from state funds. He was not acting alone, either. The individual shown on screen is Sajjad Azard, a senior colonel within the Iranian army. For years, he was known as a loyal and disciplined commander trusted by the system. That image shattered when documents he released on social media revealed how deep the betrayal inside the regime had gone. According to those disclosures, nearly 50,000 senior officers from the Artesh, the professional branch of Iran's army, had quietly joined Shah Reza Pahlavi's National Cooperation Campaign. This revelation sent shockwaves through the state and completely froze the regime's already fragile security machinery. Yet even this was only the surface of a much larger crisis. The most devastating blow came not from the lower ranks, but from the very top. Ismail Khamenei, who also commanded the Quds force and stood among the highest-ranking military figures in the country, was summoned over accusations of selling weapons and military equipment. Reports from Israeli Channel 14, along with leaked intelligence information, suggest that this incident shook the regime to its core. At a moment when Khamenei was expected to be leading forces on the front lines, he was instead meeting with figures tied to the regime's hidden financial networks. His attempt to move $700 million to accounts in Moscow and Uzbekistan was seen as the clearest sign, yet that the military leadership itself was breaking apart from within. By the time whispers of betrayal reached the inner circles of power, the damage was already done. Khamenei requested an emergency meeting with the supreme leader, either to explain himself or possibly to strike a deal. The response he received turned a serious crack into a deep chasm. His request was denied. Shortly afterward, he was ordered to appear for questioning by Majid Khamenei, the head of the Revolutionary Guards Intelligence Division. Then almost instantly, Khamenei vanished. Declared unwanted by the system, he disappeared without a trace, and his current location remains unknown. However, clues soon emerged. The wife of his business partner, Khamenei, was reportedly seen purchasing jewelry worth millions of dollars in Uzbekistan. This discovery strongly suggested the path taken by the stolen money and possibly by those who fled with it. The collapse did not stop with Khamenei. As he disappeared into underground escape routes, control of the administration passed to the third son, Masoud Karman. This move stunned the military establishment, as Masoud is widely viewed as a weak and inactive figure with almost no background in military or political leadership. Everyone inside the system knew that the real power had always belonged to the second son, Mojtaba Karman. Mojtaba was considered the most influential figure behind the scenes, the unseen protector of the Revolutionary Guards and the intelligence apparatus. But while the country was being handed over to an unqualified figurehead, reports emerged that Mojtaba was quietly preparing his own exit plan. Allegedly, he transferred $1.5 billion into escrow accounts in Dubai. When this information reached the barracks, it hit like an earthquake. What followed was a mass departure from the Artesh and from elite police units. The rot at the top spread downward, turning into a silent yet deadly storm inside military bases across the country. Soldiers who once believed in duty and obedience now saw their commanders as looters and their leaders as cowards. For them, loyalty lost all meaning, and was replaced by a renewed sense of honor. This shift was captured most clearly in a video released by Javad Sudi, a former member of Iran's special forces. Standing before the camera, pointing to the uniform he once wore with pride, Sudi spoke directly to the conscience of the nation. He reminded viewers of the pains suffered by women, elders, youth, and children, and how their suffering leaves permanent scars on families and fellow citizens. This was not just one man speaking out. It was a clear signal that the most elite units had broken the chain of command. Sudi's message was simple and powerful. Do not aim your weapons at the people, and do not follow criminal orders. His words quickly spread through Tehran and beyond, turning into a rallying cry echoed in streets and neighborhoods. That call did not fall on deaf ears. What followed was not alone awakening, but the revival of the army's long-buried institutional memory. Information leaked by Colonel Sajjad Azard and confirmed by opposition sources showed that the collapse within the Artesh was far greater than anyone had expected. Exactly 50,000 senior officers, the backbone of the army's command structure, quietly declared their participation in Shah Reza Pahlavi's national cooperation effort. The long-standing hostility between the Artesh and the Revolutionary Guards has now become a strategic dead end for the regime. The army was forced to choose between defending the nation or shielding corrupt rulers who had emptied the country's wealth. The deciding factor was the massive economic destruction caused by the general's theft. This breakdown has spread beyond the army. The police force, once the regime's main tool on the streets, is also falling apart. A message sent anonymously by an Iranian police officer to protesters struck fear straight into the heart of power. The message urged people not to leave the streets and promised that officers would soon stand beside them to rid the country of corrupt clerics. Such statements make one reality undeniable. The security forces are no longer protecting the regime. They are aligning themselves with the people. In central Tehran, individuals clearly wearing uniforms have been seen burning posters of Khamenei and spraying slogans on walls, a clear sign that fear no longer controls the streets. And when the noise of escaped planes leaving Tehran finally fades, what remains for the generals left behind will be far worse than empty vaults. The myth of the region's strongest army has shattered against the hard truth of technical collapse. The billions taken by Esmail Karni and Mojtaba Khamenei were not just stolen for luxury homes. That money was meant for aircraft spare parts, air defense maintenance, and the fuel that kept the entire military machine running. Ballistic missiles were once presented as the final line of defense. Today, newly leaked images from the 8th Tactical Air Base in Isfahan, later verified by open-source intelligence analysts, reveal a different and disturbing reality. The regime's air force is no longer functioning in any meaningful way. Its aircraft are not grounded by strategy, but by decay. The once feared fleet has effectively been taken out of the equation. The iconic F-14 Tomcats, inherited from the Shah's era and long advertised as proof of Iran's dominance in the skies, are no longer combat assets. They have turned into oversized relics, abandoned on runways like forgotten monuments. These jets no longer represent power. They represent neglect. Years of isolation have forced the Air Force into a desperate cycle of cannibalization, where multiple aircraft are stripped down just to keep one barely operational. That system has now collapsed. There are no more spare bodies to sacrifice. The process has reached a point where nothing more can be extracted. Intelligence assessments indicate that while official documents still list around 60 fighter jets as active, the reality is far more grim. Only about a dozen are capable of flying, and even those face serious limitations. The rest are little more than empty shells, rusting in place, unable to leave the ground. Pilots are losing their edge because they no longer log real flight hours. Mechanics, cut off from legitimate supply chains, are forced to search illegal markets for low-grade replacement parts, often sourced cheaply and unsafely. As advanced Israeli F-35s wait just beyond the borders, Iran's airspace is being guarded by machines that belong in scrapyards. This situation goes far beyond a weak spot in defense planning. It signals something much worse. The sky above the country is not protected at all. It has effectively been left open. Yet the most dangerous failure is not unfolding above the clouds, but on the ground. Iran's air defense network, once promoted as an impenetrable shield, relies mainly on Russian-made S-300 systems and the locally produced Bavar 373 platforms. As electronic pressure increased around Tehran, operators noticed something alarming. Radar screens went dark. Signals vanished. The reason was not enemy brilliance, but internal decay. Critical components, such as vacuum tubes and sensitive electronic boards, could not be replaced due to sanctions and mismanagement. To make matters worse, funds meant for maintenance were quietly redirected into foreign accounts controlled by senior officers preparing their escape. The outcome was total system failure. Air defense crews now face screens filled with false echoes and meaningless noise. They cannot tell what is real and what is not. Actual threats slip through unnoticed. While officials confidently declare that the skies were sealed shut, they had no idea that the radar displays were showing nothing but static. At this moment, Iran's airspace resembles Swiss cheese, full of gaps that cannot be covered. This rot is spread even to the regime's most guarded assets, its missile cities. These massive underground facilities were designed to intimidate enemies and reassure supporters. Today, they pose a danger to those who operate them. Leaked internal documents describe fuel leaks and liquid propellant missile storage caused by corrosion and years of neglect. The image is chilling. Missiles meant to be launched outward now threaten to explode where they stand. This internal decay, combined with growing pressure from all sides, paints a picture that goes beyond crisis. It signals an end stage. The economic and military framework, once described as a resistance economy, is no longer resisting anything. It is being slowly choked. Nowhere is this clearer than in the reversal of the Hormuz Strait equation. For decades, Tehran used the threat of closing the strait as leverage against the world. Today, that same waterway has turned into a trap. Iran has come to realize that the strait is tightening around its own neck. The country now relies on imports for nearly 40% of its basic food needs, especially wheat and corn. Almost all of this enters through the ports of Bandar Abbas and Imam Khamenei. But global shipping insurers, including major firms like Lloyd's of London, have stopped covering vessels headed to Iranian ports. Rising war risks and unpaid insurance fees made continuation impossible. As a result, dozens of cargo ships loaded with grain are stuck in the Indian Ocean, unable to dock. Cranes at the ports stand idle. Storage facilities are being emptied instead of refilled. Merchants who are not getting paid are turning their ships around. This chain reaction leads to one unavoidable conclusion. Bakeries in Tehran will soon run out of flour. Hunger does not care about slogans or ideology, and the regime no longer has the cash reserves or diplomatic standing needed to break this blockade. At the same time, pressure outside Iran's borders is severing lifelines one after another. The Iraqi frontier, once treated as Tehran's personal backyard, is no longer open. Under intense pressure from the United States and Gulf states, both the Kurdistan Regional Government and Baghdad have shut down illegal dollar routes and smuggling networks. The steady stream of cash flowing through Sulaymaniyah has been cut off. This was the blow that pushed the Iranian economy into freefall. The rial is no longer just losing value. It is losing purpose. Merchants refuse to sell because the moment they accept payment, that money evaporates. Trade has slowed to a crawl. In some areas, people have returned to barter, exchanging goods directly like something out of the Middle Ages. The system built to protect the state has turned inward. While top figures escaped with hundreds of millions and others hid billions abroad, ordinary officers were left unpaid. Faced with humiliation and survival, some chose dignity over loyalty. That decision became one of the final nails in the coffin. Beyond the growing resistance inside the military itself, the economic structure is also cracking. SIPA Bank, the financial pillar of the regime, along with 4 other major banks responsible for paying the salaries of the Revolutionary Guards and the army, are now standing on the edge of collapse.